Hello and welcome to the LA Venture Podcast. This is Minnie Ingersoll, host of the podcast and partner at TenOneTen. TenOneTen is a seed stage venture fund here in LA. All opinions expressed on this show by me and my guests are solely our own. David Fleck is the founder of FreeFlow, a new seed stage venture firm that exclusively backs Caltech startups. Prior to FreeFlow, David was Chief Strategy Officer at Discuss and also early at Google. But I don't just know David from Google. David and I go back almost 2 decades, and I'm pretty sure that I introduced him to his wife, Loren. Anyhow, David, as always, nice to be chatting with you.
Nice to be chatting with you, Minnie. Thank you.
Yes. Well,
let me just say thank you for bringing up the personal piece, because it's actually, to be honest, it's actually one of the reasons why I wanted to do what we're doing. But just because there are so many amazing people that you can work with and choose to work with, and once you taste that, it's pretty addictive, actually.
As you know, I almost was like, maybe I should be working at FreeFlow because it's a great thesis and you're a great person to work with. And I've known you for decades and you're also a great surfer. So there you go.
You lie. That's not true.
Well, I have a lot of fun surfing with you. Give us a little bit of the origin story. I mean, I know you, but our listeners don't.
Yeah, so I'm an Indiana guy. I was born in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Went to Miami University, then went to Kellogg for my MBA. Went to Bain and Company, the consulting firm, and again worked in the private equity group for a couple of years. And then was an early PMM, so product marketing manager at Google, still within Rosenberg's org for those who are tracking at home. And then actually worked at a few startups actually along the way, culminating actually with Discuss, where I was the chief strategy officer for about 7 or 8 years. And it was just an amazing experience because it was one of those companies that we had to, it was a good outcome, but we had to earn it, if that makes sense. You know, it didn't come easy. But then, you know, I reached this point where in 2017, you know, over that Discuss run of 7 years, you know, I had lost my father, I'd lost my brother, and I'd also had 3, you know, young children born, you know, Lulu, Leo, and Fiona. And I wanted to go into the next phase of my career with intention, is how I literally was describing it. And just, I was drawn to science and really wanted to work on things that I thought were large and impactful. And so started to, in essence, explore more around Caltech. I really started to become interested in and obsessed. I don't know how else to put it, but just that founder obsession. I just became obsessed with, you know, the amazing, number one, the amazing scientists that are there. And then number two, I just wondered why the ecosystem, the venture ecosystem around Caltech was what I considered to be underdeveloped.
I've been following along closely, and I think you saw this opportunity at Caltech. And, you know, I think people kind of try to throw up some barriers or tell you, oh, you're not scientific-y enough. You know, you don't have a professorial background, or you don't have enough of a venture background, or this, that, and the other. And what you said about being stubborn, I just think you almost had a founder mentality and just said, I see the opportunity. I have this vision. I'm going to will this into existence. And I was very impressed by that. Is that an unfair characterization?
No, you're making me blush. But it's true. I mean, sometimes you have to, in some moments, you know, you literally have to say, I don't care. It's a good idea, and I don't really care what anybody else thinks. With all due respect, everyone has an opinion. Everyone has an opinion. Opinions are like assholes. Everybody has one. Right? So
I didn't know the punchline.
But everybody's going to have an opinion, right? So, right. You know, you have to kind of really be considerate or thoughtful about whose opinion you actually care about.
So yeah, tell me more about what it was that you saw about Caltech and sort of the startup landscape that led you to start FreeFlow.
Really, what it boils down to is just, do you think there's enough deal flow there? And I think conventional wisdom is cast a wide net, you know, kind of, you know, within have a thesis, but within reason, let anything come in and at least give it a look-see. Whereas for us, we took a pretty different approach, which was visiting or speaking with Caltech professors about entrepreneurship. I think is a bit off the beaten path for most VCs. I think they really respected the fact that we were dedicated to them and understood that. And so were willing to really spend time with us, just as we were willing to spend time with them, oftentimes not even knowing if there was a potential venture there. We start out really just curious about what people are researching.
Right.
And then we get into translation over time. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I just want to make sure I get the basics of FreeFlow, which is like, you're just investing in Caltech startups and not even Caltech alumni, or, I understand from you, I've watched you just kind of go lab to lab, professor to professor at Caltech, but maybe just sketch out, you're investing, when someone is, just commercializing products out of Caltech, or how do you approach that?
Yeah. The way that I describe it is our core is physically Caltech itself, right? And that, and professors more specifically at Caltech.
And how do you think about the sort of time to revenue and the amount of money that these companies will need? If you're, out of Caltech, you're looking at a lot of things in life sciences or that sort of field where there might be longer regulatory horizons, or it might still be more fundamental science.
We're almost always, have line of sight to revenue, actually. And sometimes the companies already have customers, but we will have some that will have longer time horizons in that way. So for example, Appia Bio, that one is more, kind of FDA, because they're doing basically cell therapies, delivering more effective, lower cost cancer treatments. So we will do some of those. To give another example, so of a different flavor is Entos. So this one is founded by Tom Miller of the chemistry division at Caltech, and really is this beautiful partnership between, kind of what I would think of as traditional, machine learning and AI, cloud infrastructure, but then also quantum chemistry. So how do you basically, use those things together to find new targets? So they basically allow for order of magnitude improvements in terms of time, to find different molecular targets.
Targets being like
could be for
drugs. Yeah,
exactly. Like targets could be for drugs. Targets could be also though for industrial applications too. So as chemical companies think about, what they're manufacturing, how are they manufacturing it?
Right. So, I had DA Wallach on the LA Venture podcast, and he said that pharma companies, big pharma, is spending $15 to $20 billion a year acquiring startups, which was amazing to me. And so do you think about that as sort of potential exits for some of these companies?
Yeah, there's different ways that you can work with the big companies, but they're extremely acquisitive, and that's almost the model. You get to sometimes it's like, complete the stage 2. Some people believe in that religion. Sometimes it's or stage 3, but right around that time frame is when there's oftentimes interest because it's been de-risked. And conventional wisdom is, you need to to get any company like biotech company or one that's going after a target, et cetera, they need at least $10 million. Whereas that we think that conventional wisdom is false, and a lot of times it's because of some of the tooling that's going on that really you can boil back to the computer science, where they can just be so much smarter in the lab. That's essentially what Tom Miller's company Entos is doing, right? They're trying to make the chemists, if you will, or the people that are hunting down molecules so smart that they're very prescriptive in how they think about their tests and spend a lot more time in the cloud, looking at the data and thinking about how they want to construct the test, and they spend their time in the lab much more efficiently. Does that make sense?
Right.
So
it makes a ton of sense.
Faster. Yeah.
Right. And I assume the lab is where the costs are. And if you've got great software helping you out, that makes it more capital efficient.
Yeah.
So tell me more about Caltech.
Caltech's amazing.
But there hasn't been a whole lot of innovation. I mean, there hasn't, but it is amazing, but there have not historically been a ton of startups sprouting out of Caltech.
In terms of IP production, that they produce twice as many patents per researcher as MIT and 3 times as many as per researcher as Stanford.
That's amazing. Tell me about if you're going from, getting a patent, say, do the professors, they'll actually have that IP already and then license it to the companies that are spinning, or tell me about that relationship.
Yeah, there's an office in a Caltech. It's called the Office of Technology Transfer. And generally along the way that, an office like that is the one who's going to be filing the intellectual property for all these scientists. Not only the ones who say, hey, I might want to do something translational, they just kind of do this. I call it's a hygienic exercise, right? Where they're doing this for a lot of their researchers, just to kind of cover themselves, in all the amazing IP that's being produced. But if the researcher says, hey, I actually think I might want to, start an entity and actually pursue this translationally, there's economic terms that are associated with that, and they're very, very fair. It's generally a royalty and or equity in the company, and they're pretty low amounts. Again, fair, but pretty low single-digit percentages on those. Then they assign the IP to that entity for the duration of it into perpetuity. So it's really fairly done, I have to say. But that's just the IP, right? But IP doesn't really get you very far.
Right. So you're pairing them with the business. I don't know. Does Caltech have a business major? I bet they do, and I bet it's like theoretical econometrics or something.
The way we think about it is who's the scientific founder, who's the scientific soul of this thing, and that person needs to be coming out with it. And we have flexibility on how much time that requires, but we need that fully dedicated to. And then also who's at least the first, at least business person or business people that are also part of this, right? And so as a professor, you can either take 20% of your time and dedicate to your company and retain your lab and retain your professorship and things like that. Or you can also, in many instances, also take a sabbatical.
Wait, sorry. The 20% thing is that's like a standardized thing that Caltech says you can take 20% off of your time off. So did Google copy Caltech was going to be my question with this whole 20% time?
I don't know the historical background of that.
And do a lot of your companies get non-dilutive funding as well? Like, I don't really know ICOR. I know SBIR is some. I don't even know what it stands for. Small business something.
Yeah, the amounts generally for the SBIRs and the Rothenberg and others individually are generally, start out on the small side and could be like 100, 250 or something like that. And as you get to, particularly on the SBIR side, can definitely be low 7 figures.
I'm taking us a slightly different direction, but FreeFlow is independent of Caltech.
We're a friendly face, a friendly voice, but we also know that, or think that the best decisions are made when you're completely independent from, an entity like that, where and independence means, we don't want to have anyone else impact who we invest in, how we invest, those types of things. We want to be completely independent and not have, a person's role there or relationships there impact whether or not, at the end of the day, it's an investable idea. Our customers are the professors. Caltech's most important customers, or at least one of, I think they might even say it is the most important one, but is again the professors as well. So we have the same customers.
What you were just saying about the professors is something that a lot of people don't understand about universities, is how much, sometimes you'd say, well, why doesn't the, computer science department go in this direction or that direction? And really it's because the professors are really, sort of very independent entities, and you can't so much tell them what to do. My dad, who is a professor at Caltech, is always telling me about how important the professors are.
But I mean, it's true. we've had several people tell us that what we're doing is in its own, again, in our own very beginning way, but solving a pretty important potential strategic issue, which is, Caltech needs to attract and retain the best talent in the world. And when you think about it, the expectation now for professors at the world's largest research institutes is, if I come across something I want to be able to do, and it has translational potential, then I want to be able to do that. I want to explore that optionality, and we're just trying to make that a lot easier, a lot more seamless.
Yeah. Is there anything else we need to hit on FreeFlow?
No, I think we can move on. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Well, I'm interested in Disgust. I know you had different phases of your career, but you were at Disgust for a long time. I'm curious, sort of, what do you think you got right there? What went wrong, or what would you have done differently?
That one was probably the biggest few lessons from that one were, number one, we talked about just stubbornness or resilience. That one just is that writ large, right? Where you just have to believe in what you're doing and that you'll get to a good outcome. You just have to keep with it. And so
so stubbornness being a good thing in this context. And I think everyone now calls it grit, Flex. So if you just would call it grit, that's very trendy to just be stubborn nowadays.
Hashtag grit.
I need to ask you more about your personal life because, I know too much. I'm dangerous. But like you are, stubborn could be one word, but it's actually, you're kind of chill is the way I would have said that, which is, people can throw shade, say this, say that. I'm not saying people throw shade at you, but and you're just like, yeah, we're going to get there. Like, you remain positive. How have you built that up?
I mean, if you're asking for tangible things, meditate for 30 minutes a day. It changes the wiring, and it doesn't mean that you're not thinking about that stuff. It's coming through, but you're not attaching to it. And so I find that stuff very useful when you get to just how do you drive through the wall, if you will. I mean, sometimes you have to drive, you might try to drive around a wall, but maybe you can't. So you just say, screw it, I'm driving through it. I have to feel connected to it, that it matters, that I care about it. If I care about something, I mean, forget about it. I'm going to be tenacious. I'm just going to be pretty fucking tenacious if I care about something. And that's really what I, in some ways I feel like I've lacked, or I'd lacked at certain times in my career. I mentioned I lost my dad and my brother, but even when I was younger, when I was 18, I lost my mom. And so, that's why, for example, David, Appiabio just hit so many different things for me personally. I mean, I'm like, yeah, man, I'm in it, and we're going to win this thing because this problem is just too damn important.
I've been really impressed, actually. Obviously I know your family situation, and you've managed to channel in positive ways. How do you, where are you focused with teaching your children, like when it comes to like values and how they should think about their approach to the world?
Oh man, that's a great question.
Well, we're in it. We have, that I have a third child the same age because your wife pressured me to do so. So, so I'm thinking about these same things.
One of the things is just showing them the passion that I feel for what we're doing. And we do try to educate them on some of the problems in the world, right? Where, probably the two most relevant ones recently are, number one, why are we not going to school right now? Why are we in our home for going on 6 months? Or why is the air so smoky? Why is the air so smoky every autumn? Like every September and October, why is the air so smoky? And those are really important problems, right? Really important issues for us to resolve. And what I tell them is, I'm working with people, and I say I'm not the person, but I'm trying to help people that are trying to solve those problems for us. Having them understand that you can go after a role and a job where you can actually, try and go after some of the big issues. That's one of the things that began to frustrate me to some degree at the tail end of my maybe more traditional Silicon Valley career was, truthfully, I love all the people I worked with, amazingly smart people. But I was like, man, this is the question we're really wrestling with. This is what we're trying to do. Why aren't we trying to do something, this is going to sound judgy, but why aren't we trying to do something more meaningful? I bet the people in this room could actually solve carbon sequestration. Why aren't we trying to do stuff like that?
Right.
And so I think at the end of the day, if I had to explain it, we're trying to make that a more palatable and an obvious direction that people can go into too, and say, you can do that too. Those companies need you guys just as much as Google or Facebook, or name your, big company that is, kind of harnessing and capturing a lot of the, top tier talent.
No, that's great. I mean, I think it's really a great note to end on, and sort of about why you're doing what you're doing. And I'm really glad that FreeFlow exists, and that you're here not only in LA, but actually in Pasadena, and doing what you're doing. So David, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for the invitation, Minnie. It's always a pleasure.